Okay. Hey guys. So we're live on the Seahawks Forever YouTube channel, trying something not new necessarily, but first time I've done this in a while. So today, my thought was I would go live, doing it in a different way. And that's why if you follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever, I kind of apologized in advance. Make sure this works. Haven't done any live streaming since draft night, but want to incorporate this into the coverage once we get into the season. So here's the plan today. First of all, this is not your typical episode, probably be about a half an hour, 40 minutes. So if you're here for like formatted, really quick, high energy with graphics and video and that kind of stuff, I'm just letting you know right now, this is going to be different. When we go live, I want more interaction. That's why I asked for questions on Twitter. And so today I want to touch on news of the day. Jamal Adams out versus the Rams, according to Pete Carroll this morning on the radio. Devin Witherspoon likely out versus the Rams. But also on the flip side of that, Cooper Kupp likely out versus the Seahawks. We'll take a look at how that affected the point spread, what you guys think about the matchup coming up in 10 days. I'll talk a little bit about how we're going to format this show throughout the season, what you can look forward to, some cool news based on your feedback and your reactions to my videos of some changes I'm going to make to some things. And then we'll just see what you guys have for me in store as far as questions go. We'll also talk about yet another waiver wire claim that's really intriguing for the Seahawks. Let's make this official, though. Let's start the intro.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
So yeah, during these live streams, you'll probably see the glasses on because I'm going to be looking at the computer screen more, checking out some current information, and need to be able to read a little bit more clearly. What's interesting about this process is I used to think I was really technically literate. Thought I was ahead of the curve for my age group as far as using technology. And part of that goes back to my career in broadcasting many years ago and being a whiz in the editing room and being able to jump in there 15 minutes before I had to be at the anchor desk and editing an entire minute and a half package with audio and video and graphics and everything else. Much different technology back then. And so there's definitely a learning curve as I try to ramp up my content for the page as far as graphics go, visuals, things like that. And so as we do these lives, I'm sure there's a way where I can actually show the video at the same time with the audio underneath it here when we start these things, if that's even necessary. The thing I like about live is just more conversational, a little bit more casual, and we can get more feedback from you guys. So you can, you should be able to, if you comment on the YouTube page, I should be able to see it here, populated my streaming software. If not, do it on Twitter at Seahawks Forever and submit your questions there, and I will answer them. But I just want to touch on a couple things really briefly. Jamal Adams out versus the Rams. We expected this, didn't we? Even when he came off the PUP list 2 weeks ago, could go through walkthroughs, even with all the offseason workouts, we saw the videos of him running stairs and going vertically and laterally and all of that. I know I said it. I can't remember where I said it. I think it was on with Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Can't remember if it was their show or my show talking about the season. I think it was theirs because they asked me whether we thought he'd be ready to go week one. And I said no. And I'm not right about everything. In fact, I'll even be so humble as to say I'm not right about much, I feel like. But when I am, I'm sure going to let you know. And my answer to that was, I think he'll be on the active roster, but he won't be ready to go week one or week two. They're really going to take their time with him. And part of my reasoning for that wasn't necessarily just the obvious. Making sure he's fully recovered from this so he can go 100% and hopefully give us some return on that investment and play at a high level. But also just the idea that they've gone a year now without Jamal Adams. They're used to not playing with him, and in fact went out and made a big move this offseason to get Julian Love And so they're covered at the safety position. And we all assume that when Jamal comes back, it's going to be in a hybrid, systematic, sort of jack of all trades, a specific role on this defense where he'll be able to do what he does best. And in those nickel packages, especially, be a guy that can be up on the edge, can get after the quarterback, can play the run. The two things he's elite at, whereas his coverage skills not necessarily what he's known for. And some people think that he's really weak in that area. So they're all set to play their base scheme without him. And for whatever you must think or might think about what we gave up to get him and whether that was the right move, and we can debate that forever. Fact of the matter is, you can't go back and undo it. And so we got to get the most out of him, right? Can't trade him. Can't cut him. Next year, we can have that discussion because it's a lot less painful to do so. Easier to move on from him. So let's try to get the most use out of him that we can. So don't count on him. He's frosting on the cake, right? And so I did tweet out this morning when that news came out that, well, shoot, if he's not going to be ready to go, let's put him back on the PUP list or let's IR him for 4 games. Somebody made a good point, though. The problem with that is he can't practice. As long as he's on the active roster, yeah, it's a roster spot you can't use in another area, but he can go through walkthroughs and he can ramp up. And when he's ready to practice, he can practice. There's no limitations on that. Now, Devin Witherspoon, a little different story. And I sense the frustration. I do. A really, really good friend of mine, a guy I used to work with, reached out to me on Twitter the other day and just flat out said, we wasted that draft pick. Burn that draft pick. He can't hold up to the physical rigors of the NFL. He's only going to be a nickel corner. He's a bust. They should have done something else than the number 5 pick. And that's a whole episode in and of itself that if this thing lingers on and Devin Witherspoon doesn't contribute much, if at all, during his rookie year because he just can't stay healthy, then we'll have that discussion. But for now, I will say this, and I would challenge you to do the same thing because now we have some sample size. So go look at that list again of first-round draft picks and ask yourself what you would have rather the Seahawks did at 5. There's one obvious answer, and I know what it is, and you're all going to say Jalen Carter. And I get it. That position was a position of need, and if you add Jalen Carter to this group next to Draymond Jones and Jaron Reed, now you're talking about an exciting defensive line. But you can talk yourself into that till you're blue in the face. Go back and watch KJ Wright's podcast from last week where he had a conversation with Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll talked about his competitive scale. And this has nothing to do with the car accident. He talked about his competitor scale and how they rate these guys. They actually give them a numerical grade on competitiveness. And it has to do with self-motivation, passion for the game of football. And if you're at the top of the scale, do you then impact other players in the locker room and bring them with you? And I'm here to tell you, after listening to that especially, if Jalen Carter had never gotten in that car accident, I still don't know that he would be a Seahawk. So we have to move on from that. So you can take that one, and that is certainly one that 3 years from now, let's look back at it and see who has the better career. That's one of those in retrospect, maybe, we can look back someday and go, Jalen Carter's an all-pro. Devin Witherspoon is an average starter or always hurt or whatever. There are those of you who are so set on Jalen Carter as the idea that he should have been the pick, that even if they are both Pro Bowlers in 3 years, you'll probably still make that argument. But look at the rest of the list. Does anyone stand out that's obvious? Like Tyree Jackson was taken at 7. A lot of people say what didn't really fit the scheme. Has only been healthy the last couple of weeks. We don't know. We haven't seen him. Lucas Van Ness at 13 to the Packers. He's listed 3rd on their depth chart, according to our lads. Between 5 and 20, where they took Witherspoon and JSN, it's hard. It's hard to make an argument that they should have taken someone else. And usually that argument that I get from people is they should have gone D-line no matter what. Outside of Carter, there was nobody else. So that's that part of the argument. The fact that Devin Witherspoon might not be able to hold up to the rigors of the NFL, I don't think this applies. It's a hamstring injury. He has no history of this at Illinois. He was durable in Illinois. The questions about Witherspoon is at barely 6 foot and 190 pounds, can he stand up with the way he plays and how physical he plays? We don't know, and this isn't that. It's a hamstring. It happens. Let's get him healed first before we make any grand judgments about, well, he's just a nickel corner. Remember, the reason that they had him playing more in the slot, it makes sense for a lot of reasons, because a lot of teams these days, their most dynamic receivers in the slot, Jalen Waddle, guys like that, right? Amon St. Brown plays in the slot a lot. Cooper Kupp is primarily a slot receiver in their system. But also it gets him closer to the action as a run defender, and that's where he excels also. But also keep in mind that when they made that move at the end of OTAs and minicamps before he got hurt, it was because Mike Jackson was playing so well. The idea being Jackson would play outside, or Witherspoon would play outside sometimes, and then in certain packages he would move inside and Jackson would come in. Well, now Jackson has struggled in the last 2 preseason games. Trey Brown has probably won that job. Pete keeps saying it. If we can get Devin Witherspoon back out on that practice field next week, well, he was saying it until this morning, he's still in that competition. I read between the lines there that to mean that Witherspoon had a legit shot to still start outside. That's his long-term spot. Don't worry about the nickel thing. Let's just get him healthy. But today, Pete indicated that he's probably not going to be ready to go. And we know in Pete's history that when guys are coming back off injuries, he typically likes to see 2 weeks of practice out of them. And so we'll find out, even if Witherspoon can practice next week, I would imagine he doesn't play against the Rams. And guess what? He doesn't need to. He doesn't need to. Cooper Kupp, it sounds like by all reports yesterday, had a setback in his hamstring? Groin. No, his is a hamstring too, I think. And it's unlikely he will play against the Seahawks. Let's do something fun here. Let's look at the Rams depth chart. I'll do a proper preview show later in the week with Jake Ellenbogen, who covers the Rams and podcasts about them. And you'll see him on my Twitter timeline if you don't follow him already. But let's just take a look at the Rams depth chart. This is crazy, you guys. I think I said on a show a couple of months ago, it's basically Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and a bunch of scrubs. There's others, right? This is their starting lineup. And to my point, they have Cooper Kupp as starting slot receiver. They go, they have 3 receivers in their system listed as starters. Without Kupp, you're talking Tutu Atwell. Last year's draft pick, year before. So you're talking Van Jefferson and Ben Skowronek as your starting wide receivers with Tutu Atwell. Puka Nacua out of BYU, rookie, is next up. Demarcus Robinson. And that's the receiving core, you guys. They still have Tyler Higbee at tight end. But this is an offense that's going to struggle to score points, I think. Sean McVay was on the record the other day talking about the struggles in the offensive line that they've had. Questions about Cam Akers. Is he going to be the guy that finished the season on fire in the last 3-4 weeks last year? Probably helped some people win their fantasy leagues at the end of last year. Or is he going to be the guy that was in the doghouse the first third of the year and that the team was shopping around, couldn't find any takers for? And then on defense, I mean, seriously, I talk about this stuff every day. I cover the league. I don't know some of these names. I'm not joking. It's Aaron Donald and then guys like Ernest Brown the fourth, Bobby Brown the third, interesting, along the defensive line. Byron Young, the rookie edge player from Tennessee that the Seahawks had in for a visit, is listed in their starting lineup. Inside linebacker, Ernest Jones, Christian Roseboom. The other outside linebacker, Michael Hecht. Their corners, Jamal Witherspoon. Hey, we know that guy. Darian Kendrick, and then their safeties, John Johnson III, who's an excellent safety, and Jordan Fuller. I mean, this is a team that if it wasn't for the Arizona Cardinals, might be picked to finish last in the division. Might be in the running for the first pick in the draft, especially if Matt Stafford gets hurt. You're talking about Brett Ripien and Stetson Bennett as your backups. There is already speculation that before the deadline, Aaron Donald's name could be bandied about in trade talks. And so not that the Seahawks are going to take this game lightly. Certainly they're not. They shouldn't. I don't think they will. Man, they should win this game pretty handily, don't you think? I think 4.5 points is pretty generous for the Rams. At home, Bobby's first game at home in 2 years, regular season. All these young guys, and some guys we don't even know about yet. I reached out to Corbin Smith today, asked him if he had snap counts, because I know we haven't seen much of Draymond Jones, but it struck me as I was thinking about the secondary that we haven't seen Julian Love. Has he even played a snap? Jones and Love have played 8 snaps each. Our 2 biggest offseason acquisitions on defense, other than bringing Bobby back, of course, and the draft picks. Both played 8 snaps each. There's a lot of mystery there. And the defense played well. Talked about it on the show the other day. Yards per play, down this preseason. Consistently. Explosive plays, down. Almost non-existent this preseason. And if you say that preseason doesn't matter, it carries over sometimes. Last year, the Seahawks got shredded in the run defense in the preseason. And guess what? When the bullets started flying for real, they got shredded then too. So lots of good signs about the scheme. We hear these players talking about the scheme, how they understand it better in the second year. They understand the run fits, and not just up front. That's where all the focus is for us. But in the secondary also. They just feel a lot better about their assignments and where they belong, basically. So it looks like when I originate my live stream from YouTube, the live comments don't come through on StreamYard, which is the third-party software that I use. So you got to use Twitter if you want to ask, if you want to submit a question. Happy Blue Friday, everybody, by the way. I know I'm wearing black. I have to go to work after this, but also, maybe a little bit it's to mourn yet another blow for Washington State University and Oregon State and what's the little that remains about the pack. Also wanted to talk about this. So first of all, thank you. Hello to all the new viewers. Picked up a bunch of subscribers yesterday. And you guys really liked the Drake Thomas video that I posted yesterday about my thoughts on him, and even Caillou Blue Kelly, who I was pronouncing his name wrong yesterday. It is Caillou. And especially how much I like Thomas, and lots of really cool interaction and feedback in the comments. My most viewed video of all time. And the Seahawks may have done it again. Made another waiver claim yesterday. Not a waiver claim, but signed Robert Rochelle to the practice squad. Rochelle was waived by the Rams. And this may be, I know what a lot of you are thinking, this may be more than just, hey, let's get some intel on the Rams. You hear people say that that's not really as big of a thing as people think it is. Especially because he was released before they formulated their game plan for the Seahawks. So he's not going to have any insight into that. I'm trying to find his relative athletic scores, because this dude is an athlete. He was a guy that I liked in the draft that year in 2021. He was a guy that in mock drafts, I would often mock to the Seahawks, and it's because he looks like a Seahawk corner. 6'2", 195, drafted in the 4th round in 2021 out of Central Arkansas. And he actually made, I've seen this. I saw this morning. I just see it again. There is some disagreement about just how tall he is. Is he 6'2"? I've seen that listed in multiple places. But at the combine, he measured at 6 foot even. So we'll see. 195 pounds, but he's got those sea hockey measurements and athletic thresholds. 32.5-inch arms. They love those long arms on their corners, right? 4.40, a 1.5 10-yard split, a 4-second 20-yard shuttle, a 6'8" 3-cone drill, a 43-inch vertical, an 11-foot 1-inch broad jump. This is a guy that coming out of college was known as someone who would excel in press coverage. Where have we heard that before, right? Has Seahawk written all over him. Went to the Senior Bowl and stood out. But struggled with the Rams, has struggled mightily. Now, the Rams have a history the last few years of cutting guys that go on to be successful elsewhere. So to me, this is a no-brainer. This is a different category than Drake Thomas, who I think is going to be a starter someday. Some of you disagreed with me on that yesterday, but this is a developmental. This is a lottery ticket. This is a guy who has all the intangibles physically that the Seahawks look for in corners. And now maybe the best defensive backs coach in the NFL, Pete Carroll and Deshaun Shedd and Nico Thorpe, and those guys can get their hands on this guy, teach him that kick step technique, teach him how to play corner for the Seahawks on the practice squad. And now maybe yet again you found another young player that can develop into something. Really, really interesting pickup there. Now, as a result, though, if you haven't heard yet, a lot of you would be disappointed to hear that Holton Ahlers has been released from the practice squad. The Seahawks now have no third quarterback. And, I've done a couple episodes focusing directly on Ahlers. He's an interesting developmental guy. And it wouldn't surprise me if at some point, this practice squad gets churned throughout the season. And he could be back. Certainly he'd be the first guy that they would bring back, I think, if there was an injury to Geno Smith or Drew Lock. But I'll just say this. I think the Seahawks feel really good about their quarterback room, that they have a starter that they believe in, and that they really believe in Drew Lock, and that if Geno Smith should go down, that they can win games with Drew Lock. And this also might just be another acknowledgement, another admission that you can't develop practice squad quarterbacks in the NFL. They just don't get reps. This is why the NFL needs a development league for the quarterbacks as much as anything. Look at all the guys, though, at all positions that have been signed and made rosters this year out of the XFL and the USFL. In my opinion, they're both 8-team leagues. They're both run differently. One is from a central location. The other ones have their home fields that they play on, but they train at a central location in Texas. Let's merge those two teams into a 16-team league. Each team gets allocated players from 2 NFL teams. The math works out perfectly. Like they used to be able to, teams can sign futures deals and retain rights to guys and farm them out to the USFL, XFL. And it would get these quarterbacks that sit on practice squads for years and never develop an opportunity to get reps and game tape. Ben DiNucci almost made the Denver Broncos roster this year. And I think he got valuable reps playing in the XFL for the Sea Dragons last year. Guys like Holton Ahlers, I think, should go to those leagues, or that league should be one league. Anyway, side note, don't give up on Ahlers yet. Could be back. But I think it just speaks to how hard it is to develop quarterbacks. I think that's essentially it for today. Just wanted to touch on the Jamal Adams thing. I'm not panicking or upset or worried about it because I wasn't expecting it anyway. Right? Later on this week, I'm going to have Seaside Joe back on the show. We're going to talk about a piece that he wrote the other day about how, not just how young the Seahawks are, almost 50% of their players now on the roster are in their first or second year, but how it speaks to the turnover in the roster from 3 seasons ago and how it sets them up for the future. Also, download the PSF apps, Pro Sports Fans. Just checked in again today. They're testing the Android app. Should be ready any day, but you can get it on Apple right now. It's an interactive app where we can live stream, and the crux of it is going to be the game day experience. If you're sitting at home watching the game, you log into this app. It's free, and you can watch us reacting to it, analyzing. You can join in the conversation either through chat, or once we get to know you, or if we know you already, we can invite you up to 6 people into the video chat part of it. Kind of like Manning Cast, but more interactive with you. We can also invite other guests in and things like that. There'll also be real-time live stats happening that you can follow along with it as well. If you're stuck at work or you can't watch the game, you can do it that way as well. Download that. And then I'll have my preview show with Jake Ellenbogen, previewing the Rams game. And I told you that I would talk about some format things. During the season, I expect to do a couple things. I'm going to be active on that PSF app along with Dana O'Gorman, reuniting the old Field Goals co-hosts. We're going to do 8 to 9 of the games. They're trying to find a second team so we don't have to commit to all of them, because I do have season tickets and like to go to some of the games. But we will be there for the Rams games, or be on the app. I have given those tickets away. So I'll be doing that during the games, and then we'll get into a pattern. So right after the game, then I will do my own reaction show here on Seahawks Forever. And likely, once I get the kinks worked out of this, so I'd like to figure out how I can get the live comments in there again. We'll likely go live with my own reaction to the game. And then I'll have a preview show each week, and I will try to feature a media member who covers the other team. I already have those lined up for the first 3 games of the year, including one for the Carolina game. I'm really excited about a former mentor of mine who's been a national radio host and now is a sports director in Charlotte, Jeff Rickard. You may have seen the show where he joined me here. First time we had talked in about 25 years. And then throughout the week, and then those will be the set shows. And then I'm going to do something every week where I will choose a player of the game for the Seahawks. And sometimes I'll try to make sure it's not the player of the game that everyone else thinks is the obvious one. And I'll do little video breakdowns, not X's and O's and scheme stuff per se, but just highlighting best plays from the game and why I think they were the outstanding player of the game. You have made it very clear whenever I post videos that focus on one player and show highlights that you guys really respond to that and enjoy that. And so I think that'd be a fun thing to do. Fun for me to put those together as I ramp up my learning curve on the technical aspect of this and how to just make it more visually exciting for you guys. And then once I get comfortable with this whole new live setup, I'll just hop on live anytime something happens, injury news, lineup changes, anything that's compelling during the week, and maybe do some of those late at night too, and have some fun with those, especially if I can get some interaction from you guys. So that's going to do it. I'm going to wrap it up for today. But as always, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Again, thank you for hello to the new viewers. Thank you for those who continue to support the show. Really seen some great growth, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it. And you guys are a big part of that. So continue to watch. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever. I will upload this to the audio platforms of the show. Be sure to subscribe there too, so you get notifications of new episodes. And if you're on Apple Podcasts specifically, I don't know why the other platforms aren't better about this, and you like what I do, leave a review. That really helps for placement of the show as well. Thank you so much for listening and watching. We'll be back in a couple of days. I'm going to enjoy the weekend. You're probably not going to see me again until Monday or Tuesday. It's Labor Day weekend. Have a wonderful, safe, happy Labor Day weekend. It's our last weekend without Seahawks for quite some time. Let's get excited about that. Forever and always, go Hawks.